Extreme ultraviolet radiation from solar flare ionized Earth's atmosphere, causing a radio blackout over Russia, Japan, and Southeast Asia. And we'll see maps of this. And we're going to have the blow coming at us tomorrow as well. This is the blackout that has been caused already. According to space weather. We also have, for the first time since December 2004, 5 naked eye planets lined up at dawn in order for their distance from the sun. It's a rare morning sky show. And next week the moon will also hop from planet to planet, producing a series of early morning conjunctions. It's a planetary alignment. So set your alarm for dawn to enjoy this show. And now the long duration solar flare and coronal mass ejection growing sunspot AR3032 exploded June 13, that was yesterday. It produced an M3 class solar flare that lasted nearly 8 hours from beginning to end, and NASA Solar Dynamics Observatory recorded the slow motion blast. What is an M3 class? Well, we know classification of X-ray solar flares. A flare is the expulsion from the sun that happens when energy stored in twisted magnetic fields, usually above sunspots, is suddenly released. Flares produce a burst of radiation across the electromagnetic spectrum, from radio waves to X-rays and gamma rays. Scientists classify solar flares according to their X-ray brightness in the wavelength ranging from 1 to 8 angstroms. There are 3 categories. The X flares are the biggest. They're major events that can trigger planet-wide radio blackouts and long-lasting radiation storms. And then we have an M-class flare. This is what we're having now. M-class flares are medium-sized. They can cause brief radio blackouts that affect Earth's polar regions. Minor radiation storms sometimes follow an M-class flare. Compared to X and M-class events, C-class flares are small with few noticeable consequences here on Earth. So we are now we're going to have, from what they say, an M-class flare, M3 class. Extreme ultraviolet radiation from the flare ionized the top of Earth's atmosphere. It caused a shortwave radio blackout over Russia, Japan, Southeast Asia. Radio operators in the area may have noticed unusual propagation effects at frequencies below 30 megahertz for more than an hour after the flare's peak. Also, the explosion hurled a magnificent CME into space, according to coronagraphs on board the Solar and Heliospheric Observatory SOHO. And we have the images from there. NOAA analysts have determined that the coronal mass ejection will pass near Earth later this week, possibly delivering a glancing blow to our planet's magnetosphere. Their simulation suggests that an arrival time of 900 UT, that's tomorrow, June 15. Minor G1 class geomagnetic storms are possible if and when the CME makes contact. Now, where it hit, the flare that came on 28th, parts of Russia were struck by the GPS and radio disruptions as a long-duration solar flare struck the Earth earlier today. In the early hours of morning, Monday, the Earth was hit by a long-duration solar flare. It caused a disruption in radio signals. A solar flare is the massive explosion on the sun occurring when energy is suddenly released after being stored in the twisted magnetic fields. And within minutes from exploding, these flares heat solar material to millions of degrees in temperature, producing a burst of radiation across the electromagnetic spectrum, from radio waves to X-rays and even gamma rays. And at 6:23 a.m. this morning, space weather expert Dr. Tamitha Skov warned that several parts of the world could experience radio and GPS blackouts over the following hour. She tweeted, M3 to 4 flare now, R1 level radio blackout from active region 3030. A solar storm also launches. Amateur radio and GPS users expect signal disruption on Earth's day side, especially Asian Pacific, Australia, New Zealand, India, and East Russia over the next hour, she said. Now, according to space weather, the solar flare was caused by an explosion from a sunspot known as AR3032, which lasted for 3 hours. And the flare was an M3 class, as we said before, which means that they are medium-sized and generally cause a brief blackout, radio blackout, affecting Earth's polar regions. And according to European Space Agency, M-class flares can also sometimes cause minor radiation storms. Space weather, and I'll leave links below for you for this, growing sunspot AR3032 exploded June 13, that's yesterday, producing M3 class solar flare that lasted more than 3 hours. NASA's Solar Dynamics Observatory recorded the slow motion blast. The extreme ultraviolet radiation from the flare caused a shortwave radio blackout over Japan, Russia, Southeast Asia, affecting frequencies below 30 megahertz. And the site warned that sunspot explosion likely hurled a CME, a coronal mass ejection, into space. One of the most powerful forms of the solar storm, a CME, occurs when the sun belches out a cloud of charged particles and electromagnetic fluctuations, and with the CME directed at Earth, one distinct effect observed is that the CME boosts the aurora borealis in Australia, the northern and southern lights, the natural light shows generated when particles from the solar wind excite atoms in Earth's upper atmosphere, making them glow. And the aurora from curtains of light that follow the geomagnetic field lines and appear in different colors depending on which atoms are being excited. And the two primary gases in the Earth's atmosphere, oxygen, which emits a greenish light, and nitrogen, which appears in hues of blue, pink, and purple. Space weather says also the explosion probably hurled a CME into space. The U.S. Air Force detected a Type 2 solar radio burst, which is usually caused by shock waves in the leading edge of a coronal mass ejection. It's by Anthony Ashkenazi on Express UK and also Space Weather. I'll leave links below for you for this. Please leave your comments and thank you for your support. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.